Hello, we are Calle Sur. This is Ed from Panama. I'm Karin from Colombia. And we just opened our musical journey through Latin America with this music form, which is quite old. It predates the arrival of the Europeans in Latin America. This is a tune that we perform on wind and percussion instruments only from the highlands of Bolivia in the Andes Mountains. The instruments are the siku. This is one instrument. He played half, I played half. The cha-cha rattles. Those are goat hoof rattles. The bombo drum that is made out of balsa wood and has goat skin on it. The panpipes, the sikus, are made out of reeds, bamboo reeds. Let me show you some other panpipes. They come in all sizes. Whoops. This is the grandparent version of the panpipe, called toyo. This is the middle-aged version of the panpipes, sancas. We played the sikus, which are the younger generation, if you compare the size. So that would be the teenagers and the young adults. And then finally we have the chulis, the babies. This is important because a lot of traditional music has symbolic meaning. These instruments represent the various generations within a community. And when these Andean communities in Bolivia play these instruments at certain times of the year and festivals, the whole village participates. And the music is shared. For example, half of the village will play the instrument, the half of the instrument that Ed performed on, and the other half will play my half. But not only the sikus, but they'll play all these different sizes, really bringing in all of the generations. The other interesting thing is that these instruments are played at 12,000 feet altitude. So if you have 2 rows of instruments and you can divide the notes, it makes blowing into them at 12,000 feet altitude with very little oxygen a lot easier. So we have introduced wind and percussion instruments from Latin America. These 2 families of instruments have existed in the Americas forever, ever since the first humans lived here. And we are about to take you on a journey through Latin America, so it's best if we introduce to you what Latin America is. You see this map. It has brightly colored countries. Those are, in a snapshot, Latin America. But if you were to put it into words, a sentence that we like to use is, Latin America is all of the countries south of the United States, including the Caribbean islands. And I guess the story of Latin America begins with the coming together of cultures, starting, from 2 different parts of the world, starting about 500 years ago. And it was not an easy coming together of cultures. It was violent. It was terrible, really. If you were a Native American at the time, you were faced with being killed with weapons or being killed with diseases that were brought from Europe to which you were not immune. You would have had your land taken away. You would have had unspeakable things happen to you. But one thing is true, and that is true around the world. Whether humans come together in peace or in war, they change each other. This is unstoppable. And one of those changes is expressed in music. Europeans introduced the concept of the string instrument. The Spaniards and the Portuguese brought a variety of harps and violins and mandolins and lutes. They also brought vocal techniques and some percussion instruments, etc. But the focus right now is the string instrument. So we're going to play a tune from Peru, which combines a European music form, the march, and the European string guitar, nylon string guitar, and this Native American instrument, one of the members of the family of the panpipes, called antara. From that introduction of the family of the string instruments, the descendants of the first Native Americans and Europeans, Spaniards and Portuguese in the case that we're looking at, those descendants started inventing completely new music styles, and along with that, completely new instruments. For example, we're going to introduce to you this Native American string instrument. It was invented by Native Americans in the highlands of Bolivia in the Andes Mountains, but the concept came from Europe, the string instrument. But this instrument did not come from Europe. This instrument is definitely Latin American. We're going to play a tune in two languages, Spanish and Quechua. Quechua and Spanish being two of the over 400 languages that we speak in Latin America. There used to be many, many more, but a lot of Native American languages have disappeared, and this is an ongoing process which needs to stop. It needs to be protected. We need to protect what's left. But we still have over 400 languages, most of them being Native American languages. Spanish and Portuguese, everybody knows that those are spoken in Latin America. Some people forget that other European languages are also spoken. In some former colonies, there's still French, Dutch, English as the official language, and then derivations thereof. Let's do a tune from Bolivia about two little doves in, as I mentioned, Quechua and Spanish. And we're going to feature
the quena. The quena is a flute, as you can see, and it has an area right here, which would be the mouthpiece area. You blow into it, straight into it. And it's an instrument that is used in the Andean regions.
very, very old instrument, predating the arrival of Europeans.
Dos palomitas se lamentaban llorando, y una a la otra se consolaban diciendo: bien acordado tus bellas alas, palomay, algo contrario que sorprendido tu vuelo. Ay, 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 palomay, algo contrario que descubierto tu nido. Ay, 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 palomita, algo contrario que descubierto tu
Another example of an instrument that was invented in Latin America is the cuatro. Named after its four strings, it is a cowboy instrument from Venezuela, also used in Colombia. In fact, this instrument comes from the region where I was raised, the llanos, the savannas, and we're going to feature in this song not just the cuatro, but also the mighty maracas. The culture of the llanos, of these savannas in Colombia and Venezuela, really puts these instruments to a very, very unique use, as you will see. So you brought all your maracas along, right?
Yeah, we put an order for imaginary magical maracas for you to play. They should be arriving in your hands about now.
So when Ed tells you, join him. And also another thing, join us in singing Pio Pio Pio, Tau Tau Tau, Pio Pio Pio, Tau Tau Tau. That means,
What's that?
that is the hawk, the sound of hawking. ¿Sabes una cosa? No hay nada de luz sobre tu cara. Also, join us in singing this part of the song. Pio, 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 tau, tau, tau. Pio, 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 tau, tau, tau. And that is the call of a hawk in Spanish. It's the song about the hawk chasing the cowboy.
Si el gavilán se comiera, óiganlo bien cómo se come al ganado. Si el gavilán se comiera, óiganlo bien cómo se come al ganado. Ya yo me hubiera comido el gavilán, colorado gavilán. Pío, 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 tau, tau, tau. Pío, 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 tau, tau, tau. I don't think I heard everybody sing.
I didn't hear them
No,
either.
no.
No. You need to sing a little louder.
Okay, turn up the volume buttons right here. Turn it up. Yeah, indulge me. Turn it up. Very good. There we go. Si el gavilán se comiera, oígalo bien cómo se come el ganado. Si el gavilán se comiera, oígalo bien cómo se come el ganado. Ya yo me hubiera comido el gavilán, colorado gavilán. Pío, 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 tau, tau, tau. Pío, 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 tau, tau, tau. Okay, so in the area of the Llanos of Colombia and Venezuela, where this music is performed, the maraca players have a very unique function. They don't only keep time, but they also seem to add a few new things to the idea of playing a simple pattern. Kind of like this. Follow along, you have your imaginary magical maracas with you, right? Here we go. Just do as I do. Very simple. It's like tapping your head or patting your tummy or patting your tummy and it's one of those two, okay? Go faster. Watch out for your neighbors now, okay? Keep doing it. Don't stop. Here we go. Go faster. Óigame bien del llano y del otro lado. Que usted es la negra Karin. Óigame bien del llano y del otro lado. Que se trajo este muchacho y el joropo ya ha empezado gavilán. Pío, 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 tau, tau, tau. Pío, 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 tau, tau, tau. Again. Pío, 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 tau, tau, tau. Pío, 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 tau, tau, tau. Only 2 times. Pío, pío, tau, tau. Pío, pío, tau, tau. Only 1 time. Pío, tau, pío, tau. That's it.
Next, we feature this Mexican folk instrument called jarana in the folk tune from the Gulf of Mexico area. It's a song about a roofer, a man who goes and fixes roofs. You had to be there. Here we go.
estaba María Chuchena, sentadita en la barranca, sentadita en la barranca. Estaba María Chuchena, estaba María Chuchena, sentadita en la barranca, sentadita en la barranca. Estaba María Chuchena con el vestido en las piernas, recogiendo flores blancas y las flores le decían, mamá, qué piernas tan blancas, con el vestido en las piernas, recogiendo flores blancas y las flores le decían, mamá, qué piernas tan blancas. María Chuchena se fue a bañar, a orillas del río, muy cerquita del mar. María Chuchena se está bañando y el pensador por su casa pasando y le decía, María, María, ni techo tu casa, ni techo la mía, ni techo tu casa, ni techo la mía, ni techo la casa de María Chuchena.
So, you have taken the journey with us so far, looking at Native American influences and European influences in the music of Latin America, which is all of the countries south of the United States, including the Caribbean islands. You saw a variety of wind and percussion instruments. You saw at least 3 string instruments that were invented in Latin America: the charango, the cuatro, the jarana. And you have already gotten a pretty complex picture about the whole evolution of what we now know as Latin America expressed through music. But there's one topic we have not touched upon, and it is profoundly important in shaping us in Latin America into what we are today.
Africa, that's the element that's missing. The Africans did not come to the Americas of their own accord. They were not here because they wanted to see what the new world looked like. They were brought against their will. They were brought against their will to work for no money, for no pay. They were brought as slaves. And as slaves, they were brought in ships with very little ability to move at all. They were brought with nothing of their personal possessions. They were taken away from home, they were taken away from family, and they were purposely mixed so that languages could not be spoken commonly between each other. But as we say that they came with nothing, or they were brought with nothing, we're talking about material possessions. We're not talking about the intellect, their minds, their spirit, their heart. Those are things that we can take with us everywhere, and they're not easily taken away. So when the Africans came to the New World, they brought with them new ideas. And they brought those ideas to the Americas, and they recreated those ideas, and they created instruments like these and many others that are percussion instruments that are a copy of something that started in Africa. They also brought languages, religions, and their language fused into many different African languages that emerged in the Americas. One example of that is Lucumí, which is a language that we hear spoken fluently and, as a matter of course, in Cuba. There are songs that are in such language, and they connect America, the Americas, with Africa. the Africans were brought chained with nothing. It was a trip of a few weeks, and they had no mobility. There was nowhere to go anywhere. But what we need to remember is that they did bring something, and they did bring a lot. Whatever was in their minds and whatever was in their hearts, their spirits, their religion, songs, dances, music, thoughts, feelings, all of that comes with the human being, and it doesn't need a container, or the only container is your mind. So they did bring that, and fortunately for us, because then they introduced something to us, such as, to the Americas, I should say, such as a form of organizing music, which we know as call and response. I think you know how call and response works. Let's assume that we are all moving at the same speed. We're walking, 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 and someone decides to yell out, "I don't know, but I've been told."
I don't know, but I've been told.
That is call and response. And most of you have probably had at least a tiny urge to respond, because it's a very inclusive way of making music. It's a very inclusive way of making community. When you're not feeling so great, how many of you go to music to listen to something to help you feel better, or maybe to help you understand a little bit more of what you're doing or what you're going through? Music seems to be the go-to for a lot of people. Well, for the slaves it was the same. Music was what helped them get through these horrible conditions. Music was the medicine. And it was such strong medicine that today our popular music and jazz and many other styles of music are impregnated with Africa's rhythms, and with those rhythms that help the slaves feel better and deal with such negative conditions. So today, when we talk about rhythms that are derivative of African rhythms, such as salsa, all I have to do is say the word. Some of you smile, because that's the power of the music. And another thing that the Africans also brought to the New World was the idea of polyrhythms. Polyrhythms meaning many rhythms coexisting. If you hear one rhythm, well, that's not polyrhythm.
What about this? The two of us together.
Well, it's two of us, but it's not polyrhythm.
What about this? I'm using a different instrument.
If I'm going like this, it's still not polyrhythm. We're talking about the rhythm, not the instrument or the sound. So polyrhythm would be something like this. Right? That's what we call polyrhythm. We have two rhythms that are complementary and they work together.
Now we have two rhythms. That's already polyrhythm. Third layer. Now the improvisation. We're going to sing this call and response piece together using polyrhythm, and your response to my call will be me voy pa vete. That's me voy
Voy,
pa
pa,
vete.
vete.
That means I'm going to Vete. That's a place. And it's about a man who travels in a canoe to that place to visit somebody. And I'm going to be playing and singing the guitar, and you will know to come in when Ed sings the response with you. En esta canoa rancha que tú me mandaste traer, ya viene rompiendo el agua solo pa' venirte a ver. from Panama. I'm Karin Stein from Colombia. And we took you on a journey through the music of Latin America. We opened with wind and percussion instruments from the Native American tradition of South America. We added string instruments brought from Europe, and then demonstrated instruments that were invented in Latin America as a result of this coming together of cultures, which was not easy, and a horrible chapter in the history of the Americas. And yet, we have this today. And then we looked, of course, at the African influence. We looked at call and response, at polyrhythm. And when you think about the story of Latin America and all the groups that have come together, maybe it now makes sense that a Latin American could look like this, or like this. You really cannot tell where somebody's from, certainly not today anymore, just by looking at them. You don't know what their identity is. And you certainly don't know what they're like as people. What we do know is that we're the result of an unstoppable human phenomenon, and that is migration and the ensuing blending of cultures. Thanks for joining us here today. I hope you had fun singing along. And again, what's Latin America? What am I missing?
Ellos no saben una cosa.
Ay, se
No
nos
tienen la
olvidó.
menor idea de lo que pasó aquí porque uno está aquí hablando y ya callado.
Claro, y ellos no hablan inglés, se me olvidó por
¿Cómo que no hablan inglés?
completo. No creo. Hay que hacer
No,
todo en español otra
en
vez.
español.
Sí, todo,
No,
desde
no, es que
arriba.
ustedes entienden.
¿Ustedes entienden español? ¿No?
No.
Sí, hay uno que sí entiende,
Sí, pero la mayoría no.
Hay que hacer todo en español
Bueno,
otra vez.
había que hacer esto porque si no, no
No creen.
faltaba un elemento.
Exacto.
¿Verdad? Anyway, we were just wanting to let you know that yes, we are Latin American. We didn't have a chance to actually prove it to you through the music. We were singing in Spanish and whatnot, but once you hear somebody speak the language, then it adds another layer of credibility, and you're thinking, oh, okay, yeah, they are Latin American. So we will leave you with that.
Anyhow, goodbye, and remember, Latin America is all of the countries south of the United States, including the Caribbean.